I thought I would talk for a while, if I may, about this kit that I'm wearing in this video, which has been sponsored by the Great Courses Plus, but more of that later. Now, I'm going to be talking about this pith helmet and this strap here. These are called baldricks, and this belt and this funny rope thing round my neck, and this holster and the pistol within it, and the various bits of insignia that I'm wearing. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, well, carry on watching. But it is possible that you'll be interested to know why I got all this kit together. And if you are interested, then I'll tell you presently. But if you're not interested, then I think you should fast forward for the next few minutes. But I've come up with a ruse. What I'll do is I shall signal, okay? The signal should be this. Okay, so if you see me do that, that means I've talked about why I'm wearing this kit and why I put it together, and then get on to the details of all the various bits. If you do want to fast forward, that's fine. I entirely understand. Now, the reason I'm wearing all this, well, one of the clues, by the way, is the collar of this shirt. You'll notice it's one of my normal shirts, and it's not a military shirt. It's not the normal smart turn-down collar with the tie-type collar, because this is still the character of the Lindybeige man, if you like, because, well, the plan is to start selling what they call merch. So in due course there will perhaps be Lindybeige themed t-shirts and mugs and badges and fire extinguishers and whatnot. And to this end, of course, I was racking the old noggin for ideas for images to put on all these things. And what can I put on? I know, of course, I know one thing I could put on. Yes, this fella. Yes, Lindybeige! That's him. Yes, because he's familiar to my usual viewers at the end of all my videos. So I thought, yeah, I'll stick the Lego man on. But yeah, I did see a few things wrong with him, and I thought maybe it was time for an upgrade. Can we just have him back on? Okay. Yeah, right. Can we just? I'd like to point out something about him. I say him, or is it actually a her? You see, can you see those two sort of black curvy bits just above the belt line? Well, apparently that's how you know that a Lego person is a lady Lego person and not a gentleman Lego person. You see, because as we know, all women have hourglass thin waists and all men are fat. Now I didn't notice that either until someone pointed out to me that the torso is actually the torso of a Lego lady. But never mind, okay, time for an upgrade, I thought. So I bought this little chap. I know he's a little bit small, so here he is, somewhat bigger, and that torso, the head is the same, but the torso is the torso of the Indiana Jones Senior, as played by Sean Connery in the film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, torso. And you see it's got a bow tie, and it's a bit more civilian, a bit more explorer scholar type, which perhaps fitted my channel better. So I thought, okay, there's the upgrade, and I photographed that and sent it through to the merch manufacturer, and the merch manufacturer said, no, we don't want to photograph that and print it. I said, why not? They said, well, the thing is that Lego is a notoriously litigious company, and we might get sued for breach of trademark. I said, but surely, if you photograph Mr. Thomas Cruise with a pair of sunglasses on, you can still use that image on all your posters and merchandise for a film. Just because he's wearing a pair of sunglasses that were manufactured by some company or other doesn't mean that you don't own the copyright of the photograph. You take a photograph, that photograph is yours. It doesn't matter who designed the manufactured item with it. And they said, yeah, but this is Lego and they are really litigious and we don't want to take the risk. Okay, so I thought, right, I'll get some kit and I'll dress up and I'll be the Lego man myself. And then we can take a photograph of me, speech bubble, Lindybeige or whatever. British officers don't duck or whatever it is that I can be saying, and we'll do it that way. So I bought a beige tunic and I put this photograph on the Facebook pages, and people looked at it and went, yeah, Lindybeige, he's wearing he's got an automatic. For instance, it's got to be a pistol. It's got to be what the Americans call a pistol. It's got to be a revolver. It's got to be a Webley or something like that. You can't have an automatic. That's not right. And if you've got a pistol, you should have a holster, and then the holster needs a belt and a lanyard and all the rest of it. And you need some more bling. You need some insignia and loads of metal ribbons. Okay, so now I've got all the stuff, and here's all the stuff, and now I can start talking about it. So. Good to have you all back. Right, so first things first, pith helmet. Right, this particular pith helmet is called the Wolseley style pith helmet, and it's my favourite style. I just like the shape. It's got a bigger back end than most. It's been squared off. Why are pith helmets called pith helmets? Well, because they used to have pith in them. You've probably peeled an orange and seen that sort of white spongy stuff on the inside that's called pith. Well, there's a plant called the shoal pith or sholler pith. I don't know how to say it. But according to the internet, they look like this. So now we both know. Note to self, look up what plant looks like. It has this white, spongy, mouldable material in it that you could make the body of, say, sun helmets out of. And so that's what they did for a long time. Now, this particular kind is a later kind, and it's made out of cork, thick cork. And largely because of its shape, as well as the thickness of the cork, it is actually quite protective. And now, obviously, bullets are going to go straight through it. There's no protection against bullets. But if there are clods of earth being thrown up into the air by artillery shells and they start raining down on you, I think you'd be pretty glad to be wearing this. It's reasonably substantial and very good defence against, well, the sun, which is pretty important. And only the band of it touches my head, and there's quite a lot of air above the head and a couple of vents in the top. So it's reasonably airy and well ventilated and comfortable, and I think terribly practical. Because it is quite large, I suppose it makes your head look bigger and makes you look more imposing. But they seem to have gone out of favour. It seems that people associate them with colonialism and colonialism with bad, and so. But it's a shame because they're great. So there you go, the pith helmet. The pith helmet. That's what I meant to say. Now then, this strap going over my shoulder here is called a baldric, and it attaches to this belt. And the combination is known as a Sam Browne. That's Brown with an E. Why is it called that? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's because of Sam Browne, who was an actual person. And we know, whereas a lot of these things get lost in the mists of time, and a lot of things that get named after people, like Gordon Bennett, no one's entirely sure who Gordon Bennett was, but Sam Browne, we do know who he was, and here he is. And in 1858, this valiant man won the Victoria Cross. Now, that's not long after the Victoria Cross was first created during the Crimean War, so he must have been one of the earliest people to win the Victoria Cross, so well done him. He was born in India, and he was serving with the army there. And they were in a battle with a load of turbaned ruffians, and he saw that a gun was about to be turned on his fellows, so he got stuck in there with his sabre and was doing battle with the gun crew. Unfortunately, one of them hit him severely in the knee, and down he went, and then he got another much more severe wound to the left arm, which severed the arm completely. But he killed one of the gunners and saw the rest off, and the gun was captured and was never used against his fellows and was turned on the enemy, and he won, for this valiant effort, the Victoria Cross. Now, you may think that getting your left arm would curtail his military ambitions, but not a bit of it. Oh no. This valiant man served with distinction for another 40 years in the army and worked his way up to the rank of general. So what do you think of that, eh? But he did have a problem, which was drawing his sabre. You see, in those days, the sabre was suspended on lots of fancy little bits of leather, and he only had the one arm. So you can imagine, can't you? If we simulate it here with this this plastic mock-up of a Greek hoplon, there he is with just the one arm, and he grabs his sabre hilt and he pulls, and the sabre and its scabbard come as one, and it's really, he can then maybe start drawing the... No, this is no good, because it was imagined that you had two arms, you see, so with one arm you would hold the sabre down, and with the other arm you would draw it. But he thought, right, well, what I'll do is I'll wear a second belt, and that belt will go over the straps suspending the sabre and hold them down, so that then with my one arm I can draw the sword. And this he did, and so this became known as the Sam Browne belt. It wasn't standard issue for a very long time, but people started copying him, and the reason they did this is that other things were coming in at the same time. Officers were expected to carry binoculars and later pistols and things. So actually this rig became practical. Now, Sam Browne didn't really invent the baldric. For instance, this strap here, the diagonal strap, this is called a baldric. He didn't invent the baldric, and nor did he really invent the belt, I put it to you. And ancient Romans had this arrangement with a very thick reinforced belt with metal fittings and rings on it for attaching things to. and a diagonal strap for transferring load from one side of your body to the other, thus evening everything up. So I'm carrying a pistol on this side, and that weighs quite a bit. So if I didn't have this diagonal strap, it would hang down on that side uncomfortably, be asymmetrical. So this transfers some of the weight of the pistol to the opposite side of me, evening everything up, and I can attest that this is definitely more comfortable as a result. And of course down here on the left hand side was where a sabre would go, and in later periods it got replaced with the pistol. And so that's one of the reasons that the pistol is worn on the left side. There are others. My belt here is quite high up. It's actually on, it's over my belly button, so it's on my actual waist. And if you have the holster on this side, it's actually quite difficult to draw from a holster that's high up on the same side as your drawing hand, but you can reach across yourself to draw with much greater ease. So that's another reason that it's worn on that side. It's also good to have a high belt like this with the heavy pistol on it, because if you're an officer, all going well, you never need to draw your pistol and use it. You should only draw your pistol when things are going very badly wrong indeed. Almost all the time you're just running about with it, and it's just a weight on you. So if it's up here by your centre of gravity, and your belly button is roughly centre of gravity height, and then it doesn't flap about, and it's close to your centre of gravity, and that makes it much easier for you to run about. It doesn't encumber you. If it's lower, it moves more, it flaps around more, and it's further from your centre of gravity, and it's more encumbering. So it's a better place to have it. And you don't need a quick draw option. If you need to quick draw as an officer, things have gone really, really, really wrong. So the quick draw wasn't really something that they were bothered about. And you'll see that even if you did have it the other side, it's got a big flap, keeps the weather out, and stops twigs and so forth snagging on your trigger. So it keeps you safe. Keeps your gun clean. It's not a quick draw holster anyway, even if you were wearing it on this side and lower down. Right, well, I suppose I'll talk about the pistol. If I draw it out, you will see that it is a Webley Mark VI, because you know your revolvers. This is, if you like, the classic British officer's pistol. It was the standard issue pistol in World War I. It was in 4.55 caliber, which is a pretty hefty, fat caliber. That's 0.455 of an inch. I've heard these referred to as Ashanti stoppers and Zulu stoppers. Later on, there was a 0.38 version, which was considered actually perfectly adequate in terms of stopping power. It's a revolver, takes 6 rounds, and don't worry, this isn't an actual real one. And I know that some people, even now, they're starting to type trigger discipline. They'll be Americans, because Americans just go frothy about trigger discipline. Well, he's got a hand on the trigger, yes, because I'm posing with it. And I'm on my own. There's no one else around. No one can feel threatened, because there's no one who can see me here. And if I do this, I'm not pointing a gun at you right now. I'm not pointing a gun at you because you're not there. There's just a camera there. I'm here on my own, so I can't scare anyone. And it's got a very heavy trigger pull double action, but I can do it. It doesn't actually have a safety catch. They relied on just a reasonably heavy double action trigger pull instead of a safety catch. And it's so definitely unloaded. It is in fact an air pistol. I'll open it up. That's where the gas canister would go to power it. It's got these slightly, you heard that noise it made? It's got a slightly plasticky grip on it, which is a little disappointing, but otherwise it's the same size and same weight as the real thing. This is all cold metal that's been machined using the original machine tools, apparently, and the original plans of the original gun. So it's a pretty good replica. One dead giveaway is that it's got no firing pin there, nor a hole through which the firing pin would pass. Instead, it's got a valve there, and every time the air pistol hits that valve, it lets a little bit of gas out. One slightly odd thing is that if I break it, I notice that these are much smaller than the .455 caliber, and yet the muzzle is, I've measured it, a 4.55 caliber muzzle, but the cartridges are .38 cartridges. So this is actually a hybrid of 2 different versions of the gun. It's got a .38 cylinder and a .455 muzzle. But it's a pretty good replica overall. And the little manual that came with it proudly boasted of lots of films that this has appeared in, playing the part of the real gun. If I do have a criticism of this particular replica, it's that the spring on this lever here that I push, which brings the sights back, which then allows me to break the rifle. The spring on the real thing is a really strong spring. You have to really push hard, whereas this is a really weak spring. I just flick it like that, and this comes undone. So as an actor, you'd have to act pushing hard. I'd rather not have to act and just have a tough spring to push against. And there's a very good reason for having a very tough spring there, because if I pull on the sights there, you can see that releases the front of the gun. So if you're wandering through a wood and a twig just goes twang like that, you don't want that to happen. It wouldn't happen on the real thing because the spring is a very strong spring. Similarly, as I put this into the holster, it's really easy just to knock the sights on, and then when you draw it out again, it comes out like this. That's no bleeding good. But overall, a pretty fine replica. The Webley itself was popular, was reliable. In the channel Bloke on the Range, I've made some collaborations with him in the past. He tested the Webley with a few of its rivals, the Colt and an Enfield and so forth, and he got 4 people to test it, firing it double action, single action, and all 4 said that it was their favourite pistol, whilst the others all had their strong points. Overall, the Webley was most approved of. Why did they use revolvers and not automatics? Because automatics are better, aren't they? Because they're cooler and you can get more rounds in one. Well, a pistol carries, the American term, this is a pistol if you're American, but if you're British, a pistol could be a revolver or an automatic. Handgun, if you like. A revolver is reliable. If I point this at someone and then pull the trigger, the main thing is that I want it absolutely definitely to go bang. And if things have gone so badly wrong that I as an officer need to use my pistol, then if I can't fight my way out of it with 6 rounds, I'm not going to fight my way out of it. You can put 1 or 2 men down with your 6 rounds and you're not going to take down an enemy platoon. So really the fact was that 6 rounds was adequate for getting yourself out of trouble. You didn't need to be someone with 11 rounds in a magazine or whatever, but you did, oh so definitely, need to know that when you pointed it and pulled the trigger, it would reliably go bang, which very often automatics don't. Revolvers are a lot more reliable than automatics, and that is why military people liked them. This holster is made in India, a stout piece of leather. They're still making them. And one thing I'll say about all this leather in general is this is quite creaky. You know, listen to this belt. Everything creaks, and I do wonder if I were hiding in a bush and Fritz were coming along, some sentries and whatever, and I didn't want to be overheard. I think I might at that moment wish I had webbing belts on rather than creaky leather, but never mind. So I've talked about the Sam Browne. I've talked about how I haven't necessarily talked about how it's adjusted. I've got this rather long torso, so I need to put a couple of extra holes in this thing. But this belt here can also attach to a ring on the top of the holster like that, and that gives me another 1.5 inches of breathing room, makes me a little bit more comfortable. This here is where my ammunition is stored for the reload. So if I've fired off my there you go, it came out, did you see? But if I fire that and I go fring like that, and of course naturally I'm going to try to reload, so I open my ammunition pouch, and boy oh boy is it difficult to get stuff out of here. I'm not completely convinced in the wonders of the design of this ammunition pouch, to be honest, and I don't think I'd be reloading at a great rate of knots. Anyway, so that's what that is. That's supposedly where you keep your bullets. And you'll notice that it's on a rope. This rope is called a lanyard. And there are a number of these available on eBay, and I chose this one because it was by far the most beige. But there is a problem. You see, all the lanyards were the correct and the same length. The trouble is that I don't have regulation length arms. So I try to aim this pistol and I can't straighten my arm. I have to point it with a slightly bent arm, which means that it's much harder to hold everything steady. And I don't like. If I point it forwards, it's not as bad, but it still comes taut if I straighten my arm completely. I don't know quite if I'm going to do anything about that. I think I may just spend my time posing always with a bent arm and hope that no one notices that the lanyard is a bit on the short side. So what's the lanyard for? Well, one thing is I can just let go of my gun for a bit and then say, what's that? What's that? What are the coordinates? Give me them here again. No, good Lord, no. These are the coordinates. Great. Make sure they get those. Stupid man. Right, and then I pick my pistol up again, so I can let go of my pistol when I need to, and if I accidentally drop my pistol, it's not going to go very far. An enemy can't snatch my pistol off me. It is said that some people feared that these lanyards could be used to throttle you in close combat, but that's pretty unlikely. I would have thought in the close combat you're likely to be trying to shoot him with the pistol. One does hear of lanyards being attached to belts instead of to necks. Obviously, you'd have to shorten it quite a bit. Anyway, so that's the idea of the lanyard. There is a ceremonial aspect to them as well, but that's the practical purpose of the lanyard. Right, well, possibly I should say a word or two from my sponsor, the Great Courses Plus. Now, in case you don't know what the Great Courses Plus is, it's an enormous website with over 10,000 lectures on it by distinguished professors and other academics from around the world, though largely from America, and quite a few of them are British. And they have teamed up with the Smithsonian and various other, again, quite prestigious organisations to bring you knowledge. And it's what they call a subscription on-demand service. So you pay a monthly subscription and then you can watch as much as you like. If you are a member, you've paid a subscription, you could just sit there all day getting knowledge blasted into your eyes. And you can try this out for free, because if you go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/Lindybeige, you will find their details of a free trial, so you can watch a load of the lectures they've got, and you can do some searching around the site to see what topics they cover and to see if it's for you. And if it is, well, grand. And if it isn't, well, it didn't cost you a thing. Now, one of the great things about it is do you remember when you were at school? You go to you go to a museum, and the teacher would say, "Okay, and here I've got a questionnaire for you all to fill in." Oh, and all the kids would just go, "Oh, how to ruin a museum visit is you've got to answer this, fill in all these stupid questions." When I went to a different school, and I said that I was a great fan of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, oh, God, I hated that book, was the universal response I got. Everyone said that. They just tensed up and they all just roared and just, I loathed that book. Every single person without exception said that. Why was this? Because a trendy and I'm sure well-meaning teacher the year before had made it the set book for English, so everyone had to read it, and so they all hated it. You may remember school and how much you hated all the having to learn stuff. Well, you leave school and then actually you find that finding out stuff, learning knowledge about how is actually rather good. And the great thing about the Great Courses Plus, well, one of the great things, is that there's no exam at the end of it. There's no as you're watching it, feeling of mounting doom. Oh, the more I learn, the more I'm going to have to remember and then regurgitate from exam. You don't get that feeling. It's just, oh, that was interesting. Oh, and that was interesting as well. Now, could I find anything completely pertinent to this video? Do they have, for instance, lecture courses on British officers' uniforms of the 20th century? No, they don't. But those of you who watched my last video about the amazing Jack Renton and his time on the Solomon Isles in the Pacific Island in the 19th century, you may find it fascinating, for instance, that in the oceanography course there is a lecture on explorers and navigators, and it's from this chap here. But does he have a good scholar's cradle? Well, I don't know how. He's handicapped, you see. You see, in his hand there's some sort of electric device. I don't know, some controller for the slide machine or something, and this forces him into an inverted interlace cradle. It's not my favourite, but I suppose it's a compromise that he has to come up with in the light of that awkward thing. He couldn't go for the 5-point steeple, you don't, of course, have to watch whole courses. You can just pick and mix with individual lectures from different courses. So, for example, in the history of the ancient world, there's a lecture from this guy on hunter-gatherers and the Polynesians. And just look at this guy. He's got beige on him. He's got so much swagger, and he is living testimony to the fact that necks are superfluous. So I was also quite jealous, you know, when I watched some of the lectures, because you see, they've got budget. And look what he does here. You see, he's talking to one camera, and then for no particular reason, he just turns, walks across the room, and starts talking to another camera, thus making his lectures seem so much more dynamic and interesting. Whereas here I am stuck talking to one camera the whole time. Well, you know, maybe I'll get a crew and a vision mixer one day, but for the moment, I'm afraid, you know, I just don't have that kind of budget. So you can imagine I'm just green with envy of the budget that they have for these lectures. Anyway, so that's what they can show you on the Great Courses Plus. You can click on a link in the description, which is much quicker than typing in the address, which is appearing on your screen now again, and I think I've probably said enough. Now, so I've talked about lanyards, this one's a little on the short side, and holsters, and the Webley and the Sam Browne. Right, okay, let's talk about insignia. Up on my shoulder you can see two pips. Technically they're called stars, but almost everyone calls them pips, so I think that's perfectly fine, and a crown. Now this insignia means that I am a, do you know, colonel. Well done, have a beige point. Yes, that makes me a colonel. One thing I didn't know when I bought these off eBay is that they changed the style of the crown. In 1953, Queen Elizabeth and all the rest of it on the throne, and so they changed the crown to her crown, which comes out, so like this one. You see, it comes out and goes down and in, whereas before they used the king's crown, which has a continuous arc along the top. I didn't know that when I was buying the insignia, so I've bought the modern kind, which was probably cheaper, but no matter. So if you have one pip, you're a second lieutenant. Two, you're a first lieutenant. If you have three, you're a captain. Then you go to one crown, which is major, and then one crown of the pip, which is lieutenant colonel, and then you've got this, which is colonel. And then above that, you start getting crossed swords and sabers and field marshals, batons and all sorts for the upper ranks. Now you'll see that I've got a shiny button here up upon my epaulette. Actually only ranks above mine, brigadier and above, would have had shiny buttons. You'd have plain buttons there until 1953 when they said, okay, everyone can have a shiny button there. So that means that my tunic is modern. Another clue is that if you look at the label, you find out this tunic is a mix of wool and polyester. So that's, I imagine, not a tradition that goes back very far. One easy way to tell the difference between a World War I British officer and a World War II British officer is where he's wearing his rank insignia. They used to wear them down on the cuffs here. Very similar system, pips and crowns and so forth, and stripy piping, which got more elaborate as you went up the ranks. But a lot of officers weren't too keen on this. They felt that snipers were able to see that from too great a distance. It marked them out as too tempting a target. And they started going against regulation and putting them up on the shoulder, and this sort of caught on. And by the early 1920s, the cuff insignia was abolished and things went up onto the shoulder. So there you go, up on the shoulder, World War II, down by cuff, World War I for Brits. Earlier on in the 19th century, in 1855 actually is the first time they came up with the system of different numbers of pips and stars and so forth for all the various different ranks of officer. They put them on the collar. So there you go back a bit further, they're on the collar. Now, should I be wearing them? It seems that actually you can sort of get away with wearing rank insignia as long as you don't actually pretend to be a colonel. If I were trying to pass myself off as someone of a certain military rank, then that's actually a criminal offence. But as long as I'm making it quite clear that it's just a costume, then that's broadly speaking okay. And this refers also to these things. Now, when I was a little kid, I used to see these on soldiers all the time, and I never knew what they were. I just knew that the soldiers had these. And I thought they read like some sort of weird barcode, you know, thick line, thin line, red across. No, what these are medal ribbons. What you might not know is that every medal has a unique ribbon. And so you can show someone all the medals you won, even if you don't have the medal itself on you, just by showing a little bit of the ribbon that each one normally is suspended from. So these are my service ribbons. And there is a grammar to them. You read them from top left down to bottom right, and you start with the most senior. So you have awards for extreme bravery, things like the Victoria Cross, which comes before all others, and then you've got the George Cross and the Military Medal and others like that. And you have also of high precedence are the orders of things like the Order of the Bath, all the things that make you a nobleman, the things that make you a member of a certain elite. So the Order of the Bath and the Order of the British Empire and all those things, those go quite early on. And towards the end, you get the stuff which you are awarded for just having been there or having turned up. So this last one here, for instance, is a Territorial Army Long Service Medal. So it's just having been in the Territorial Army, you get one of those. You could have been rubbish, you could have done nothing in particular, but just for having been there for a while, you get those. So those ones tend to go at the end. This one here, this rainbowy one, is a World War I Victory Medal. So that one's quite common. There's a World War II one there. Now, when I bought these, and you can just buy them, you don't have to prove that you've won anything. You can just buy the ribbon, buy the yard from various shops. I said to the man, don't give me anything obvious like the VC. Don't give me anything that someone who's trying to show off would pick, or anything extremely recognizable like that. And I positively want a set of medals that no one in reality could ever possibly have won. So if anyone ever does accuse me of trying to use stolen valor, I believe is the expression used in America, I will be able to say, oh yeah, right, yeah. This one here is a 1911 Delhi Durbar medal. This one here is a 1957 Indian Independence medal. This one here is an 1873 Ashanti Campaign medal. So do I look 170 years old to you? I mean, granted I'm moisturised, but I think that's overdoing it a bit. And this one here is a recent Afghanistan medal. So no one could conceivably have won these medals. I just wanted a load of bling. The rules are that your medals shouldn't be wider than your tunic pocket, and the rows should have the narrowest rows at the top, and there should be an incredibly precise measurement, which I'm going to put on the screen now, in between the rows. And a measurement so ludicrously precise that I can't imagine any seamstress being able to reproduce it. In tropical climes, you do have permission to put all your ribbons on brooches. I imagine the reason for that is that you're expected to wash your tunic quite often, and perhaps you don't want to put all your medal ribbons in the washing machine, because that could go wrong. Anyway, so I won't go through every single medal that I've got here, but the point is that that's what they are. They're service ribbons showing that I've won these medals for either having done something incredibly clever, which is none of these, or having been to an awful lot of places at an awful lot of times. Right, so I'm running out of things to say, really. I've talked to you about Sam Browne and so forth. And who knows, in the future there may be a photograph of me on some merch if ever I'm walking down the street and I see someone coming the other way with a photograph of me on his t-shirt. This will be a problem because I have no idea what the etiquette for that situation is. Oh, I made a mistake. I forgot to talk about a thing. Do you know the thing I forgot to talk about? I forgot to talk about this up here on my collar. These are my Regimental insignia. You see, these tell you what regiment I'm a member of. And again, you can just buy them on eBay. In fact, while I was at it, I got three. I got a flaming bomb with ubique, which means everywhere, which is the motto of the artillery and the Royal Engineers. I got those because that matched the insignia that's on my mess uniform. And I also got a Royal Signals one, which has got a little relief of Hermes, which I think is just rather pretty. But the one I put on here, to wear to make this video, is this one. You see? I mean, look at it. Oh, by the way, they're always in symmetrical pairs, so that the one faces one way and one faces the other, which is a nice little touch. Anyway, look at it. It's got everything. It's got everything. It's got the crown, it's got the wreath, it's got a motto, and it's got a dragon, a big dragon, and a sword. And the dragon has got the sword in its mouth. It's got, I mean, just look at it. That's a meaty badge, and I like it. And so, what is this a badge of? Do you know? Yes, some of you do, but for those of you who don't, I will tell you. That is the badge of the Royal Army Dental Corps. Yes, I'm a battle dentist, yes. So if ever you need a filling and you're under heavy fire, I'm your man. I travel light, a man alone. I get in, get out, wherever there's trouble. If you need a filling, just call. Lindybeige!